States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. On the agenda next, we have public audience.
This is so awesome.
So we're going to have public audience, and before we get into that, I don't know if everyone received a letter. We got a letter that was sent to everyone, so we'd like to make sure that goes into the record for public audience from Natalie Vassa on Thursday, August 14th, sent a letter about purchase of the house next to the Flower Bridge. Whom may concern.
I will send you an electronic email.
So everyone, we could put that into the public audience. And for public audience, the rules would be asked to speak, go up and speak at the podium, please, and for 3 minutes.
At the podium?
Hmm?
Want us at the podium?
Why not? You just,
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, or speak from your seat.
is it being
Yeah,
televised?
it's informal.
I think it is. Speak from your seat, so I think they can hear. So just,
Talk about it, huh?
so, public audience is open. Would anyone
Yes, I
like
would
to be
love to.
recognized? Joan.
Joan Code, 26 Whitcomb Drive. I'm very pleased that the public has the opportunity to address the board through this public audience. I am concerned that the First Selectman's office had salary increases of $10,000 and $20,000, an additional staff of $68,000, and a news release person at $15 an hour about a week after the new fiscal year started outside the approved budget. Money is being withdrawn from the general fund and insurance fund to pay for salaries and deficiencies in budgeting. And First Selectman Mary Glassman tells the public that she is returning $80,000 of unspent expenditures to the general fund. How can you have it both ways? We purchased the Ethel Walker property for $11 million in 3 installments without a plan for future expenditures on the land. The Simsbury Farms Fund is losing money every year without any plan for reducing expenditures. Why should the taxpayers subsidize the golf course? Why hasn't the money from the sale of Pharaoh's Farm been placed in the general fund until there is a long-term plan for the money? What is the plan for the Dewey Farm? First Selectman Mary Glassman has decided to buy the Hudson property without any plan for future use and expenditures associated with the use of the property. The town has several boat launches presently to satisfy public needs. The town should not continue to be in the real estate business. This property should be in private hands with a continued $5,000 property tax as part of the grand list. Why was Town Attorney Bob DiCrescenzo allowed to be conflicted with any discussions or contracts with the Ethel Walker School? Due to the conflict, taxpayers have to pay a contracted attorney over the years for approximately $100,000 for his service. Couldn't the Ethel Walker School be told to find another law firm other than Updike Kelly? We recently spent thousands of dollars for maintenance of Memorial Pool, and it is presently in substandard condition with mold in the showers. Where is the plan and cost for maintenance of buildings and structures within the purview of Mr. Toner and all the parks? Why is First Selectman Mary Glassman using the general fund as her cookie jar? What is the long-term plan for the Performing Arts Center and costs associated with the plan? In the past, all heads of departments were required to work 40 hours a week in Town Hall remaining open until 7 p.m. on Monday. With the approval of Monday opening until 7 p.m. and Town closing 1 p.m. on Friday, everyone is working 35 hours. Why are we paying employees for 40 hours and now they only work 35 hours? The police department employees are not leaving at 1 p.m. on Friday. What is the long-term plan for roads and winter snow removal? What is the plan for truck purchases? What is the plan and cost for all town asset maintenance? Why is the town's long-term plan with the Hartford Financial, when will the Hartford Financial be completely, when they vacate the building, what is the long-term plan? What is the Board of Education's plan to reduce costs with declining enrollment? And what is the long-term plan to reduce the mill rate? All these issues should be addressed by the Board of Finance. Thank you for listening. And I'll put my stuff on www.simsbury.com. And Simsbury patch is out at this point, but they will be up and running, and I'll get it on at that point. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your point. Anyone else like to speak? Mr. Keller.
That wasn't bad, John. 331.
Thank you.
How much?
331.
Robert Kalishman, Simsbury.
31.
I also would like to thank the chairman and the board for their indulgence in adding public audience. I think it's a very important thing to have in public government, and it's been long in coming, and it should have been here years ago. And I just want to point out, and to the public, that when people say things can be changed. And it had been the policy of the previous chairman to mention numerous times that there would never be public audience. Well, we have public audience, and he was defeated by the public. Now, case at hand, I've noticed the budget, and it looks to me as though it's being put together with chewing gum and smoke and mirrors. And the reason I say that is you're taking from this fund, you're taking from a reserve fund. The people have no idea where is this money coming from. And in my feeling, if we have a reserve fund, that tells me, and I'm not an accountant, that tells me we're taxing the people too much. If we're spending money from a reserve account, we're taxing the people in Simsbury too much. Case in point that I like to point out in view of the recent raises and such, I asked the Board of Selectmen for 2 increases of personnel in the Simsbury Police Department. It fell on deaf ears. It should have been picked up, in my opinion, by this board. And the board should have said public safety first, and in view of the marijuana factory that we now have, in view of the increase in drugs, and you can hold your head and do whatever you want to do, but facts are facts. And if you go to the police blotter, you'll see that as recently as last week, there's been another heroin arrest in Simsbury. Are these falling out of the sky? Or is it because everybody's saying that if marijuana's all right, heroin's all right? And that's what we needed the additional police for. But we didn't have the money for the police, but we have money for Ethel Walker to the tune of $100,000, which the last meeting you people were ready to go forward with at the encouragement of finance personnel, Ms. Schofield, who wanted to go and hand out $6,000 without even looking at the question, to cut back brush. Now we have a case where, realistically, are you going to spend $150,000 to $250,000 to bail somebody out that has a home down here by the bridge, the Flower Bridge? The same person that came to the Board of Select meeting and said, there'll be no Veterans Monument in my backyard. And we want to more or less give her $250,000 as a gift. More like whether it's 150 or 200, it's too much money, and we should. And this board shouldn't be involved in the real estate business. That's not your purvey. And now we got Ethel Walker again. I voted for Ethel Walker. Now all of a sudden we have trails, and now we have more lawyers on more lawyers, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, we have a lawyer that we have to pay $60,000 to because there's a conflict with our town lawyer. If the town lawyer can't handle it, let's get a lawyer that can, that has no conflicts. This is the second time it's happened with Ethel Walker. And if Ethel Walker's more important than the town, then let him drop the town and take Ethel Walker. but we shouldn't have to pick up for his negligence. And what it is, it's the negligence of Updike, Kelly, and Spellacy for allowing in the same town for two of these situations to exist, and for the taxpayer to pick up the bill. It's not right. And finally, the performing arts, and I'll make a prediction. They came for more money at the last meeting for the fireworks. They were supposed to take care of everything down there. They came to the meeting of the Board of Selectmen, they asked for more money for the fireworks for the September Fest. They were supposed to have the whole ball of wax down there, and here it is, they're back for money. And I'll make a prediction to you. And my prediction will be, when it's all over, and their final report, which they haven't filed, and your finance director is here, ask him if they filed a report. He'll tell you no, they haven't filed a report. You have no idea what they're doing down there. But my prediction will be, they'll be back to you and back to the Board of Selectmen for money for this ending year. And I thank you for the pleasure of addressing you, and thank you, it's kudos to you for making this decision.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kalishman. Anyone else for public audience? All right, we're going to close public audience. Thank you. Take everything under consideration. Minutes, approved minutes.
Motion to approve
Second.
July 15th, 2004 special meeting.
Yep, we should have those. Any corrections? I had a
No.
second. We have a second to that.
I seconded it, yeah.
But my ear's still a little clogged from the beat, so
They look good.
excuse me. The left ear. Body silicone, so it clogs up my ears. Any corrections, or? I just got to go one thing, when we, in page 1, the third paragraph under item 2, talks about Mr. Shea reviewed several maps with the Ethel Walker open space land consisting of approximately 1,700 acres. Is that true?
Did he show the maps?
Yeah, they have 1,700, Ethel Walker has 1,700 acres?
No, that's not, it's not exactly one.
With Ethel Walker open space consisting of approximately 1,700 acres, so,
It's not an even number. I mean, it's a.
well, I mean, yeah, but maybe he showed there was more, so that was the only thing that just struck me as interesting. So, we're into the minutes here, the first one.
All the different parcels?
I don't know what we were talking about. I mean, it's not really a relevant point, but I was just curious. I was reading this and just trying to.
I missed the first part. So, I mean, later on, they talk about, dealing with on the top of page 2, they talk about open space maintenance for 2,900 acres
Yep.
that the town is responsible for. So
Right. Yeah, that's what the town knows. I remember hearing that.
The 1,700 though
Yeah.
includes what someone would say with Connecticut and the conservation easements on the map, so.
That's what it must have been, something
Must have
there.
been.
I don't know if we need to clarify or just, it's not gonna, I don't think cause any confusion.
I think that was supposed to be town-wide open space, not Ethel Walker open space.
See, that's the point.
Conflicts
The
with the
reason I
number
made
above.
the point on page 2, it says we have 2,900 acres that the town is responsible for, so the 17 is.
Now, one other thing under also item 2, the last paragraph, Ms. Glassman distributed and discussed the proposed expenditures for the open space fund exhibit with board members. Did she distribute that? I don't think she did she?
What page you on?
Page 3 of this, number 2, last paragraph of number 2, on page 3, which says, Ms. Glassman distributed and discussed the proposed expenditures. I know we talked about, I think what she distributed was areas that they could spend money on, right? But she didn't really have a schedule, a proposed.
No, she did not. She's supposed to come back to us with a
Yeah,
proposal.
so there's nothing to be attached here. I guess I was looking for, should we have an attachment, an exhibit attached? I don't think there is one. No.
It wasn't 80%.
Yeah, so maybe, I don't know if that's really,
I would pull out distributed. She did discuss that.
she discussed, so we just pull distributed out. Just put Mary Glassman discussed, so we take distributed and out, cross that out. for
And
some
take the
reason.
word exhibit out too.
And exhibit out. Open space fund. So that sounds reasonable.
I had a couple of typo kind of things.
Okay,
Sorry for being a little late. On the first page, the second to the last line, Mr. Toner stated that the only funding being requested is for, not for is.
okay.
And number 4, on page 3, Mr. Mancini suggested the town should be set money aside, not setting. And I have a question. I have a whole bunch of really super nitpicky things, like
Okay.
lots of things capitalized that I don't know why they're capitalized, and stuff like, there's a sentence that ends that the town is responsible for. It should be for which the town is responsible. Little grammatical things like that that don't change the meaning. Do we care about fixing those things? Because I can not be nitpicky, or I can if you care.
Well, if it makes, somebody can interpret it wrong, if it's an interpretation, I
That's
would try to
just-
get them right if it's,
It's nitpicky. Okay.
I mean, the purpose of the minutes is to basically, so somebody has an
Yeah.
understanding of what we discussed, and
Yeah, okay.
at least that's my understanding. If you want to go, then fine, we, all right,
It's 1,400 acres.
1,400? Oh, okay, so we changed it to 1,400 acres? Okay.
All right, you're talking about the
The
Ethel
Ethel
Walker combined
All of
parcels.
the 3 parcels. Yes.
No, we don't, what we bought is 400 acres, right?
Well, this last
This last one.
one was,
No, we only bought a total of 400 and some odd acres. We didn't buy 1,400 acres of land.
By the whole.
No, 1,400 acres would be the Upper Walker open space, which would.
They might own
include Santa Connect.
1,400, that's what I
Yeah.
was, yeah. Well, why don't we just leave it at 1,700 and it is what it is, and I think it's not gonna,
Well, I have a suggestion. Why don't we
Just take out the
strike
number
out consisting of approximately
Yeah, exactly.
1,700 acres, because
Yeah.
we don't know for sure that's correct.
Yeah. That's what
It
I
doesn't
would-
really change
I
the
would
meaning
put
of anything.
Period. After.
oh, it says with the open space land consisting approximately, I think they meant 1,700 in total, but yet we have 2,900, we have more land.
Just conflicting numbers.
Yeah. So we take out, strike out 1,700 acres? Okay. Good. Okay. All those in favor?
As amended.
As amended?
Yes,
Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is passed. Okay,
Motion to approve the July 15th, 2014 regular meeting minutes.
second, do I hear?
Second.
Okay, any changes, proposed changes here, discussion?
Top of page 2, the second line, there is currently no policy on how bonds, you need the word have been handled in the past.
Have it handled, okay, so that's the second line, okay.
I had a philosophical question on these. In the past, when we had split votes, it did record who voted against. I noticed these minutes didn't do that. There were 2 votes that were split in this particular meeting. What's the board's pleasure as to whether or not that gets recorded in the minutes?
I would like to follow the precedent that we've had for quite a long time where, for example, on page 3, Mr. Mason seconded the motion and it was passed 5-1. And in parentheses, we used to indicate who was voting no.
Okay.
I mean, I think that makes it clearer and I mean, isn't that the precedent we've been using for some time?
It's been a long time since we got.
We don't have too many
understand.
It was
votes
under
that
our
are not.
clerk, right.
But occasionally we do.
Right,
Yeah.
and it did used to record it, you're absolutely correct. But I think also if the person is expressing the reason that they're voting no, that also ought to be in the minutes.
I agree.
So that it's not, so that it's a full statement of what happened at the meeting. So I just brought it up because I was one of the no votes. And I noticed it didn't say that, and I'm happy to have that. But if I do have that, I would very much like the reason that I gave at the meeting for voting no to be in the minutes.
So we should probably go redo that, put the reason no in the name.
Yep, that's fine, that would be fine with me, I just wanted to make
So
sure.
you were no on that motion?
I was on that particular one.
Which one?
The motion to
The
approve,
25,000?
yes. And the reason for the no was that it had not been brought to the board previously and was not considered in any of the planning in the prior month and came up very suddenly. And I wanted to learn more about it rather than just hand out $25,000 on the spot for something that came up for the first time.
No.
And
You'll
then-
notice on there, right after that, we asked Hiram Peck, Mr. Peck to come to this meeting,
Right, to provide the information.
providing information.
Right. And then yours was the no vote, Linda, on
Yep.
page 5?
Yep.
And I
And I
think,
didn't give a reason.
oh, you didn't give a reason at the meeting? Okay.
So Barbara, is it sufficient to say Barbara Pagey voted no because it had not been brought to the board previously? Or do you want to go into detail?
Or included in any budget conversations.
That's it.
So we can put that in.
Oh, it's recorded, I'll
Oh,
pull from that,
okay.
that's not a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. And Linda's gonna be the no on page 5?
She just voted against it.
You told me why, but
I talked about it enough previously.
Yeah, I thought you
There's no
said it
reason you
during the
have to
meeting.
indicate why you vote
You don't
something.
have to.
Right.
Are there any changes?
Yeah, I had one other thing. Top of page 3. I'm perfectly fine if we make a motion and refer to a memo, to budget transfers that were set forth in a memo of a certain date. But I think the memo of that date has to be attached to the minutes as part of the minutes to make sure that it's clear. Because otherwise we should put in detail what transfers we're approving. And if we don't do that, we should attach
I
them.
think Deb Sweeney is in control of that, because a lot of times I'm not getting these handouts. So if it's not here, I probably didn't get a copy. But I'll talk to Deb about that.
So can we maybe even put in there see attached and make sure that we get it attached? If we're gonna make it part of a motion.
I agree. I think for the official town record, we ought to always have attached to the minutes any memos that were submitted to the board during the meeting.
Well, we do. But Barbara's saying that it should be, she would like it to see attached.
As part of the
To
minutes.
the minutes, but I think if you went into the record of the meeting, you would see the minutes and then whatever documents.
You would?
Not always, but we can, I hear your concern, we can address that, absolutely. That
And
makes
if
sense.
somebody wants to see what it's for, then you have it right
Not
there.
always.
I don't
What
think
hap-
so.
Yeah, when we give documents to be included in the record,
Possibly. I don't believe that they were on the minutes.
for this
online.
one, for this particular issue. Okay.
Okay.
So I agree with Barb, let's attach it to these when they're finalized, and in the future be part of the record.
Anything else?
That was mine.
So, all those in favor of passing, as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Then it's passed, all right? Finance Director's report.
All right, how do I want to hand this out?
You don't want to?
No, I said, how do I want to?
Hopefully you get good news for it.
At some point, we'll actually be getting these to you guys before. No.
Any extra copy of this?
Hopefully, okay. No, nothing but good news. So far, I haven't found many bad guys. Give both of them to you. All right.
Thank you, Joe. You want to get one?
Yes.
Definitely.
Thank
I charge her extra.
25 cents a pay. What's
Haven't
the
given
charge?
cookies in like 3 months.
Yeah.
I apologize. Yeah, perfect. I'll go through my notes. All right, so fiscal 14 numbers have not changed from a collection standpoint, still 99.45. We'll actually take that off the report. Collections through July 31st, so this is for fiscal year 15. You guys were at 97.3. That's 97.3. It has the half year of the real estate taxes, right? Because you pay real estate in 2 taxes. This is the highest that you guys have been since 2008. Relatively positive sign. Very, very, very high collections. I don't want to, it was almost 0.5% higher than last year, which is sizable for you guys. Investment policy. Now you guys have that in your. I think I gave all of my notes. So we had met a while back with Morgan Stanley to come up with an investment policy. I told you guys at the last meeting that I would provide it to you guys. Basically, this policy just kind of covers, it's very similar to the other investment policies that we have, in that it still follows the prudent investor rules, and the one caveat is because this is investment of general fund revenue, it ties into the Connecticut general statutes and what I'm allowed to invest in, such as municipal bonds, CDs, all the stuff that Stephen Sams had come here and spoken to us about. The one area I need you guys to look at with this is specifically on the time constraint. That was one of my bigger frustrations with your current policy is I can only invest in 6-month financial instruments. This policy that I proposed is actually a 5-year. So that'll have to be a conversation amongst you guys. For now, I just recommend taking it, digesting it.
Which part has the 5-year? Where's the time?
Hold on, I have to bring it up. It's
Maximum maturities, is that it in page
correct.
5?
Yes,
In the italics?
correct.
It has how much percent? I mean, you can't do 100% for 5 years, right?
There is no caveat.
The issue gets down to essentially what kind of duration are we willing to entertain?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some of the instruments that we would look at, if you were talking about a 5-year, you're probably talking about a CD, something with a high yield. Obviously, we'd be looking at some sort of exit clauses, just so that if we had to terminate early, we could do so without significant financial impact. Because you got to keep some level of liquidity, especially with the storms that the Northeast seems to have periodically. So obviously, I don't want to put us in a situation where we ever have a cash crunch. I don't really see that happening. I think we'll build enough flexibility into the policy and into anything that we buy where it won't be a problem, but it's something that you guys need to be aware of.
What do you envision in here? I mean, right now we have undesignated reserves to invest. And also we have extra cash.
So like
And we have cash in other funds to invest. Does this include all that?
I'm going to pull from
I
everywhere.
mean, we have more than $12 million to invest.
Right now, I would basically have, at least in 1 month, I would have 25 million at the 1 month yield. Well,
You know what would be helpful for us is if you could say, look, I envision so many dollars and where it's all coming from, so we just kind of get a schedule and get a feel for what's short-term needs, long-term needs, so we can just,
okay.
maybe the next meeting we could just kind of look at,
Yeah.
talk about it, just.
Understood. You want to, Stephen and I are actually working on that. It's, long term, you guys can invest upwards of $10 million in a multi-year. If you want to do a 5-year CD, you can do a 5-year CD. But then there's always the short-term instruments. In July, you're very heavy in tax collections. I have about $50 million in the bank right now. So.
I was having a hard time understanding the sentence.
Which
the
page?
maximum, page 5, under maturities, the maximum average weighted maturity of investments exceeding 2 years shall not be more than 5 years.
This is dangerous.
and no more than 25% of the dollar value of those investments may exceed 5 years in duration, but if the limit is 5 years, then we wouldn't have even the 25% restriction in there, and
Because it's the average rated maturity, not the maximum maturity.
yeah, I guess my thought would be that we'd want to have a policy that would maybe have parameters, a certain percent that maybe would be allowed up to 5 years, but maybe it's only 50% the board would authorize, or...
Well, I think that's why if we see the schedule of what we have, because we have money from, there's a lot of pockets of money in the town. You have some funds that are pretty permanent. We always have the cash that are there. I mean, like we have reserves in the sewer fund. I mean, they're just
$5 million sitting there.
and we got money all
It's
over.
been there for a while.
Right. And
Providing us with that.
I had to.
So actually, this is a bit of a tortured sentence, but the way I read it is that you take all of the investments that are longer than 2 years, you average them, and that average can't be more than 5 years, which infers that some of them could be 10 years.
Exactly.
And that's left flexible. Okay.
What we're talking, I think,
But no
It-
more
it
than
is-
That's why we would've-
25%.
But there's no limit on that. I mean, right now, you could just go do it all that way, and
Right.
we want to just see to see what pockets,
right.
to get some overview controls. I mean, right now, we get everything short term.
That's why it's confusing under maximum maturities. I just,
And I think from the presentation we had, we have to go to longer maturities to get a higher yield.
Right.
And I guess we got to understand the benefit and what's the risk.
Yeah.
Well, that's
We gotta really understand the
That's
risk.
the
To
reason
the
I asked the
extent-
question about duration, and it's even, it's mentioned at the end of the sentence here, because duration is a measure of risk.
But I guess, and I don't know if we're debating this now or you want him to finish his report.
Honestly, it's up to you.
I mean, I think what we're going to do, we're just kind of talking about it. I don't think we're going to, it's kind of in his report. It's not that, we're not going to vote on anything. It's just kind of get some flesh out, some concerns or requests for the future.
I guess as I've said before, my concern is that we're getting such an incredibly poor rate of return now under our current policy. And I'm concerned that the first paragraph here so adamantly states that investments will provide the maximum safety for principal invested, without mention of balancing that against the risk of underperforming the market. And I think we need a balanced approach. I mean, the limitations in place under state statute already provide an enormous measure of safety. You can't invest in anything risky. It's just not legally allowable.
Yep.
But if you are held by your own policy to picking the maximum, not the optimum, but the maximum safety, you're really limiting yourself to, picking stuff that isn't necessarily in the taxpayer's best interest. I mean, I'd like to see us move a little more towards talking about optimizing both the safety and the rate of return, recognizing that each mitigates against the other. I think philosophically we need to shift a little bit so that we provide a better rate of return for.
Well, we can put our toe in the water. We don't have to jump in right away. We can
Right.
put our toe in and see how it works.
But I think we need language that enables us to put our toe in, and if you
Right.
use the word "the maximum,"
I hear you, yeah.
you don't let yourself do that.
We want flexible language. I think we want flexibility. Nick?
Joe, what's our relationship with Morgan Stanley on this? Are you just working with them on a,
They came in, gave a sales pitch. I like what they did. They were actually a reference from the town of...
but we have no contractual arrangement with them, at least for this.
Oh, none whatsoever.
Have we also, by any chance, considered going back to FIA and asking them what their recommendation might be for, I don't know if this is an area that they even work in, but.
Yeah, it's
but-
somewhat different, but yeah, I can absolutely go talk to
But I
them.
mean, they have a pretty good idea of what investment policies ought to be, and they can relate to the question that Linda's asking about trying to mitigate the risk and return
Fair enough.
issues and so forth. And I agree with her. I mean, if you have a statement in here that says that we're gonna take the greatest effort to have no risk whatsoever, we might as well be in item number 6 on that list in the state treasurer's investment fund, and it'll earn virtually nothing, and we won't have any, we won't have any.
That's where we are now.
Yeah, but
And it's because of the policy.
But, I mean, I think what we need as a board are gonna have to get comfortable with is that if we're willing to take a stance on duration and go into treasury securities and things of that sort, there's the possibility for, principal being lost, and I don't know how that's gonna be received.
Do you guys have any interest in having Stephen come with Chris Gashmer at the next Board of Finance meeting? Would that probably be?
I would.
Well, yeah, and
I enjoy hearing Chris.
I think if they could address Nick's question there, show us over the last 20 years or some, reasonable period of time for these 6 possible investment items,
They all look like a cliff.
Yeah.
Right? CD interest. Basically, we're definitely prohibited from investing in anything risky. When I drafted this, I fully envisioned just investing in CDs. Reason being, if you invest in the bond market, I have to mark to market at the end of the fiscal year. It's impacted by interest rates, and I got to be honest, I don't know what kind of appetite you guys have for those kind of. It's not real numbers. I mean, you're going to get whatever the face value of the bond is, but. I want to make my life as simple as possible. I'm trying to explain a theoretical variance is not one of my hobbies.
Well, I certainly don't want to have to explain to the taxpayers why we lost, 10, 15, 25%, on interest rate credit risk issues, with a big block of funds. I don't think that's a nice discussion to have.
It's the conversations Norwalk's having right now.
I'm sure.
With the caveat, don't worry, it's coming back. Because it does.
Well, I have less of a problem with that if we're out buying individual bonds that we plan, for example, that we plan to hold to maturity.
Yes.
But the market issues on the interim periods of time may be an issue.
Absolutely.
So action out of here is we're gonna ask our current investment advisors to take a look.
I'd echo Maura's suggestion. I mean, we ought to have them in to talk to us about OPEB anyway.
Okay.
I mean, theoretically, that's the one piece of all of this that we do have the purview on, still, I think. And,
So we'll invite them in next meeting, talk about OPEB and the pension, then give us an update there, financial, just give us a quick overview, and then go into this investment policy.
So can I just ask, did this language come from them?
Came from myself and Morgan Stanley, and Norwalk, and taking a look at, what was the other town that we looked at? I think it was also Fairfield.
So
Well,
everybody
mostly.
says that earnings are secondary, and that the most important thing
The
is,
most important thing is your exposure. Yeah.
so that's different than what we're talking about. So that's
But I want to go back to, I missed what you were talking about, but where things went off a cliff, that's on paper.
It's all paper. Yeah.
There are no real losses.
No,
there.
I'm saying, but if you
hold
look at a
things to
20-year return
maturity-
of rates, it's,
But if you're holding them to maturity, there's really no risk.
you get what the face value is, correct?
Right.
If you buy a
But you
3%
can't
CD for 5 years from now, you get 3%.
You're gonna get 3%.
Correct.
Right, absolutely, so.
But Linda, there is credit risk, that is another element of this, and
What do you mean by that?
The instrument that you bought will not get, you'll lose, that won't get paid at all.
So Linda, let's say you
Not if
buy
you-
a 3% bond, it's over a 5-year period. I believe.
Detroit paper.
Trying to remember which way it goes.
So we're buying,
You don't
No.
invest in.
We're buying AAA,
Yeah.
that's
How
secured.
many AAAs go bankrupt?
Every year when you go through the fiscal close, you're marking the market. So depending on how the bond market itself works, if the value of your bonds is now less than the face value, you have to you're booking that, it's flowing through
But
your.
it's only on paper.
Yeah, but in the
Hold it
audit,
till maturity, it's gonna,
so,
It shows up in the financial statement.
correct.
yeah.
So, but it's not real.
So you have to explain that.
It's temporary.
it's-
But
Look at
it would
CDs.
affect our bond rating,
No.
something like that?
No.
Well,
If we're holding garbage notes?
Well, if we got into.
You're not gonna hold-
If we got into a large
You won't-
amount of
you won't
garbage,
hold
it would,
garbage notes.
it could certainly affect our bond rating, yes.
Well, and you
You're
wouldn't,
gonna get AAA bonds that are
Right.
traditionally backed by some sort of insurance.
If we invest in
Or revenue
CDs over a
source.
5-year
Correct.
or 7-year period, we're looking at FDIC insured. I assume we would diversify among institutions so that we
Oh,
have the
yeah.
maximum.
On the CD front, there's zero exposure because.
What I think we need to do is, I think they need to talk to us about credit risk and interest rate risk, and talk about, here's the type of investments we do now, versus what would this policy allow us to do? And what do we understand and feel comfortable with?
Yep.
So we just understand it, so we know if we do this, here's what could happen, and do we understand the risk of allowing that to happen?
I'd add one other thing. We need to be clear that an investment policy for a municipality, for our general funds, is going to be different from the investment policy that we would have out there for OPEB and our pensions and so forth. I mean, it might be very similar in many parts of it, but the things that we invest in might be completely different.
Yeah. Because we're worried about preservation of principle.
We also asked, I mean, Linda probably could do this, but could they also let us know what the specific state requirements are? Because I know there are requirements in terms of investment grades, the bonds, and I don't know, nothing lower than a B or whatever it may be, or B plus, but it would be useful to know what the current state laws are.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, we may be able to invest in triple B bonds, which are still considered to be investment grade. We may not want to.
I agree, but at
because
least,
it's-
I'd like to know at least what the state requirements are. So at least we know.
The
as a
thing that
starting
I'm
point.
a little torn with though is this first policy statement 1.0, as Linda pointed out, following it, I believe we do have an obligation to put it in the most conservative stuff. Because that's what it says. So to me, and if that's what they're recommending, it seems like this language doesn't quite mirror what they're suggesting we should do. And I'm wondering if it's too strong in putting, no exposure, return to secondary. The primary thing is to maximum safety for principal invested.
Well, Barb, that gets back to Linda's point, that, we need to figure out for our own comfort levels, what kind of trade-off between risk and return we're willing to accept.
I completely agree. I'm just suggesting that they've drafted a policy
Within the
statement
policy-
saying,
within the
we
policy,
don't
it
get to
seems to
do that. We've already decided it in the first paragraph here, saying that we're not gonna do that.
No, it says here, we're gonna, safety of principles is 4-month objective of the investment program.
At maximum safety, which means basically, put it in a.
But
This
is-
Peter, I think we've got to start here, we need to move.
Yeah.
We need to continue to look at this.
Yeah, let's keep it going, we'll get, if we can get them in, and so we can better understand it, I think,
Can we also get your suggestion that we have a schedule so we can see what we're talking about?
Right.
Because for me, I'm thinking about this in terms of a vacuum, I have no idea.
I mean, right now, we're getting 1/10 of 1% on about $20 million, and we get $25,000 a year.
Yeah.
So,
You guys used to get massive.
We
we used to get $1 million
used
too, when interest rates were high.
to budget over $1 million of
$1
It's
investment.
not because we invested different, it's just that the rate of return was
Rates of
different
return were higher.
in the funds that we were in. Now, the question is, are
Even
we
in the
gonna...
in the past, that was just the banks though.
Right.
You guys didn't have an investment.
So in our mind, by changing the funds we're in, are we still preserving safety? And I think that's what we have to get over.
Yeah.
Safety of principle. I know I'm not an investment advisor, you're more in tune, so, we can, we'll get that for next time. All right, why don't you keep going with your report?
All right, did we want Hiram to?
Sure, why don't we have Hiram,
Just because he's here and he's got something else to do upstairs. So Hiram, the reason that they wanted you here was in regards to the transfer from last month. I think the question was specifically from Barb. But they wanted some information on the $25,000 project.
Well, we'll cover it.
Just give a sort of a brief overview of what I have, and then I'm happy to answer whatever questions you may have about it. A while ago, we did revise the zoning regulations, the standard town zoning regulations. Back in 2009, we added the town center code, which is a very different type of regulation called a form-based code for the town center. Just recently, we started actually in 2013, we did the Hartford, we did a form-based code for the Hartford property, which is about 61 additional pages of form-based code, which goes into our zoning regulations as well. We're working right now on a village district, which is another form-based code for the section for Weetag, for the historic section of Weetag, essentially from Hartford Road to Powder Forest Drive, working on that right now. At the same time, we've also approved and adopted a workforce housing overlay zone, which is a section of the regulations which allows for the production of workforce housing. It used to be called affordable housing until that term became unpopular. Workforce housing now, but it's the same thing. That section of the regulations is important in that it provides us some ability to work with developers with regard to providing 80% of the housing that comes in and 20% of it as workforce housing. We also did a couple of years ago, we added what's called a planned area development regulation, a PAD regulation, which has been incredibly successful in terms of attracting new and different types of development to the town. We have also modified the regulations to add accessory apartments to the regulation. We had an accessory apartment regulation section before, but what we did was clean it up a lot and add some more standards because people said, we moved into a single-family neighborhood, we don't necessarily want a whole series of accessory apartments with us as well. So we'd be very careful how we did those standards. So what we have right now is we have...
What's an accessory apartment? Is that like a mother-in-law?
Yes.
Yeah, only we can't call them that anymore.
Oh, a father-in-law
It
apartment.
could be not a relative, it could be even somebody you want to rent it to.
Yeah.
You know, if you, for example, what's really interesting right now is a lot of our public, very familiar with this, is getting older. And so if you want somebody that lives upstairs or lives next door in case you fall down or in case you have, you're away or take care of your dog or whatever, and you don't know that it's essentially an accessory apartment from the outside. Someone has a door in the back of the house, or maybe they come in the front door and they live in the same house. So it's becoming more and more popular. So we have to be very careful how we do that. What I'm trying to get down to is that we have a whole series of regulations that need to be integrated and put together so that not only the definitions fit, but the regulations are integrated properly, they're updated properly, and they're actually legal. That would be really nice if they were legal because we want to make sure that we don't have any problems with regard to terms that clash. There have been a lot of recent court cases, McKenzie and other cases in Connecticut, which have really caused a lot of zoning regulations to get turned on their head in terms of how decisions are made. We need to update the regulations that we currently have to get all these things that I just mentioned integrated into a set of documents that will actually make sense. I did do last year our subdivision regulations, which saved the town about somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000. I did those in-house because it was a little bit of a slow time. And actually, I really didn't have a hard time doing it. It was very straightforward, very simple. But when you're trying to combine all these different regulations, it really takes a lot of time. I just did an analysis of things that I'm working on right now, actually for my upcoming performance review. And it turns out that it's about 25 projects right now that I'm working on. So I could do it, but I just can't do it given the constraints of what we're working on, what else is going on in the office right now. So what I did about a year ago was ask 3 consultants for estimates in terms of what it would take to integrate these regulations that I've just mentioned to you. And the bid that I got that I thought was reasonable, that will give us a proposal, and it wasn't a bid, it wasn't a formal bid, but it was an estimate, and I'm sure we can work with it, is the $25,000 that I mentioned to you before. So that's what that's all for, is to try to get everything updated.
What's the time frame, hiring? What do you think?
Probably 9 months.
9 months, I'll have it
Yes.
done?
Probably start in October, between October and the end of the year, finish it up spring. Absolutely.
So I think my question was, we have just finished the budget and just had the public vote on the budget. Could we have included this? It sounds like a year ago you knew about it. Could we have included it in the CNR budget at that point in time as a priority for the
I
town?
did have it in, but it was suggested that I take it out and that we do it.
Yeah, the Board of Selectmen suggested, since it wasn't an annual reoccurring event, that it would be better to treat it as a individual item, and we did expect we would have funds left over in this year's budget, so that's what the Board of Selectmen said. They would rather not include it in the operating budget than it's 25,000 next year that we aren't gonna spend, and then you've inflated the budget, so they didn't wanna do that.
Well, CNR is not necessarily that you have to keep spending the same thing. It's
So they didn't treat it as capital, it's not a capital expenditure, so the board felt, I mean, you could agree or disagree, I'm just explaining what the Board of Selectmen did. They said it wasn't a capital item, it's a consultant item,
Joe,
so
where'd
that's why they.
we take the money out of?
Out of the capital and non-recurring.
Yeah, because what happened is I think we had funded money in there for projects that did not happen.
Right.
So there's money in there.
Yeah, but CNR builds it into the budget over a 5-year period. We don't
Right.
really want to do that here, do we?
I don't think it is it?
This is a one-time event. So you guys have a capital non-recurring fund from about 3 or 4 years ago. You've expended what you're gonna spend, because the project's closed after 24 months. And you guys have actually transferred more money into it than you had money going out of it. You basically underspend some funds, and there's nothing that stops the payback. It's a very interesting.
So the money's already there for
Right.
this, so we don't have to.
That's what we voted on.
Yes.
Money's already there.
I just want to make sure if we pay for it, we pay for it once, so we don't start spreading it out over
Right.
time.
We're paying for it
Yeah.
once, but
We're
money
paying for it
that
once.
their board was putting in.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
the projects that didn't happen, so the money's there, so we might as well use it.
Correct.
I think it's a good use of money. Definitely there's a need. My concern is we gave money once before and it didn't quite get done. So I just want to, this was a while ago before you, Hiram, but I remember we took money out, so I just want to make sure that it gets, that's why the time frame.
Would you anticipate that 5 years from now, we'll probably need to do something similar again?
I hope that it's probably seven years, but I would say it's certainly possible.
I mean, it's just a recurring need to get the regulations up to date and to add new things and to be current?
You know, it really depends upon the rate of litigation, the rate that the legislation changes, those kinds of things. I think what we're going to have and what we have now is a really sort of state-of-the-art set of regulations that I hear from many towns around the state that they're looking to our regulations now. So I think that we're ahead of the curve right now. So it's certainly not going to happen in 3 or 5 years. I think, it's probably going to be longer than that.
So when they ask you for a copy of the regulations, you send a small bill with them and ask them to donate?
$5 grand.
Okay, I'm all for that. You can retract your no vote now.
No, I still, my same concern is that this is, I mean, and it was articulated, considered more operating one time, I get that. But we're not always gonna have this situation where we happen to find extra money somewhere. And I think we just went through the budget process and we should put everything on the table during the budget process and not have this come the month after the budget closes. And that's my only concern, not the quality of this project or the investment itself, but the manner in which it was handled, that it wasn't included as part of the budget.
Point taken.
Should have waited 4 months.
And like I said last time, we'll
We'll wait.
Well, no, he did it a year ago, he told
We'll wait
us.
4 months next time.
But we appreciate
That's not right.
Hiram coming, because he did what we asked him to do. We appreciate it, so now I think we understand it. We approved it, so it was informational, so thank you.
Thank you.
So let's
Thank
move
you.
on.
Thank
We
you.
got,
I'll
thank
get a copy
you.
to you so you can all read it, I'm sure.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Joe, we got Simsbury Farm Subcommittee, no action?
No action, we haven't met in 6 weeks. I've spoken with Jerry, asked him to get going on that again, so we should have something in the next couple of
Nick
weeks.
and I are dying to meet again, so.
And actually, at the next
Especially
meeting,
in
I'll have a
summer.
presentation that my interns put together. It's pretty good.
Okay.
It's a very good analysis. Long-range plan, town and Board of Ed, we're both still working on assembling the information for the base case. We had a meeting with Barb and Linda, they gave us a good framework. I gotta be honest, I just haven't been able to get a whole lot of traction on it, but I
Now,
think I
You've
need
been
to
hanging
commit.
out at the beach too much. I see
I
that,
have.
Jan.
I have.
one thing that I had to call from Matt and talk to him, he's just, he wants to make sure we kind of articulate our basic core purpose of this kind of the scope. And so maybe there's some way we can get something, so when they present it to their board, they understand it. I'm sure Mary might want it for hers too. But, I think when we passed this, our understanding was we were going to get a core operating 5-year projection, because it's not an absolute, it's a projection with assumptions. And then we model off of that what-if scenarios. And I think it's a high level, it's not a detailed budget, it's more of a almost like we do the mill rate worksheet where we have a one-line item number.
For some real.
Yeah,
Peter, how about this? I will volunteer with Linda's help to draft a mission, and we will draft that, and I'll get it to you maybe even tomorrow, and
Okay.
we can go over it, and we'll get it, as long as you're okay with it, you can send it to them, and
Sure.
well, it'll articulate what you're saying, but just kind of
Okay.
get down.
We'll pass it out, everyone can take a look at it, if they have any comments, pass it through me, and then we'll get it to them, so I know it's September 9th, they got a meeting, they want to articulate it, their board, so,
Is that all right?
that sound reasonable? Good, okay. Thank you.
Can I just articulate that we've had a little trouble getting started with this? We talked about this a couple months ago. It is the summer and everybody is tan. And, has school starting, lots of other things going on where they can't go out and get tan. I understand all that. But we do have a commitment to have a preliminary spreadsheet before the next Board of Finance meeting, so I'm thrilled with that commitment that we just got today. So hopefully that will happen for next month and we'll be able to kick this off in September.
It's
Fantastic,
not that far off anyway.
thank you. Joe, estimated reserves.
All right, so estimated reserves, so keep in mind, there's two different numbers up here. You're gonna see in my short paragraph, it says $1.5 million. Is based on just the raw operations. Down below, I actually threw in the $217,000 reserve for Simsbury Commons. Pretty reasonably assured I'm gonna have to take that. So just from your core operations, assuming that we're gonna reserve for Simsbury Commons, you guys are gonna be favorable about 1.3 million, 1.35.
What's the Simsbury Commons?
So Simsbury Commons had a tax appeal. So they chose not to take it in the form of a refund, but, it was reasonably assured as of June 30th that we were gonna sign the contract, sign the agreement with them for the reduction in the taxes. So they took a credit of $217,000 on their taxes for this July.
But it's for a prior period,
But it's for a prior period, correct.
so proper accrual, but we're modified accrual.
We're modified accrual, so it's a gray area.
Yeah. The accountant's dilemma, what is it?
This is where the for-profit world's a whole lot easier. You just book the payable and call it a day. So after the operations, you guys had approved during the budgeting process about $955,000 worth of capital projects. So right now, you guys are slated to be, I'm just gonna use round numbers, $400,000 favorable to the general fund, which is pretty good considering some of the impacts you guys had this year with the negotiated salaries, the amount of snow, Simsbury Farms is offsetting $235,000. You guys had a relatively good year. Your people are very cost conscious. It's probably the first job that I've had in the municipal world where everyone seems to be concerned about their budgets. It's great.
Does the snow include salt?
Correct.
The 400,000 includes the negotiated settlement on Simsbury
Correct.
Commons. Okay.
I know you guys had a reason to not want to fully fund the current year's shortfall for Simsbury Farms, but that would kind of cover,
We could definitely,
which would put us back to a zero and fund that and make that the last time they get funded excess above.
yeah. What I'd recommend is, I'm getting, in October, your numbers will be more finalized. We can definitely talk about remediating whatever the overrun is in Simsbury Farms, and cleaning up the year then once we have final numbers.
Yeah, also, we have the ability, we've done money to the pension plan, we've transferred money, we've put a couple $100,000 there, so we can talk about it again, we have time. If this number moves more favorable, we can solve other shortfalls that we have. So, this is our chance to get some of these shortfalls right, because we're still, even with a good market, we're still under in our OPEB and pension plan, so we still have to keep our eye on the ball there. Why don't you move on to the next area there? I
So
think
bond
some good
premiums,
news.
we talked about that, we spoke about that briefly the last time. You guys had two issuances that have happened in the last 3 years, 2012 and 2013. You have $238,000 worth of bond premiums that are sitting on these projects, not doing anything. In the past, you guys had always transferred this amount over to the general fund. We should probably set up some sort of policy or rule on a go-forward basis that guides me in what I should be doing. Granted, I could take it.
But where are they now?
They're in the capital fund.
So they're in the capital fund, so it didn't make it to the operating fund, it's sitting over here as fund balance in the capital fund. So when you reconcile the capital fund, we're inconsistent with the way we used to do things, and the past finance director chose to leave it there. So it built up reserves in the capital fund, which shouldn't have any reserves.
So the capital fund is running 0% base difference.
Yeah, it's whatever the bank is.
So now we have to use those somehow. I don't know if we can transfer, I think we have to use them through, we can reduce the cost of future bonds.
Future
Isn't that what
borrowing.
you'd use it for?
You can do that, you
Yep.
can take it to the general fund. I mean, usually when you do refundings, the savings is on the debt service side, so it actually reduces your debt service payments, so that's how it's supposed to fall out. I don't know why it didn't happen.
So would that, if we did that, would that get allocated to each board in accordance with the premiums, or just, it would just be?
Well, what do you mean? I mean, if you wanted to use it for capital funds, you could use it to defray the borrowing cost for the February issuance.
I was
That's the
thinking when
simplest thing to
when the
do.
money gets paid in advance, gets budgeted, I guess, by the boards, Board of Education and Board of Selectmen, they get charged for the borrowing costs in addition.
Correct.
So this is money that really is offsetting those borrowing costs. So I guess my only question is, if we're going to defray future borrowing costs, do we defray it in accordance with the percent that they were charged, or do we not need to do that?
Well, they don't get
You don't need to
charged.
do
I mean, we
that.
pay the capital out of debt service.
Correct. Well,
So their operating
he's
budget's
talking about when you
budget.
go and you borrow, every single project that we borrow for has an element of cost issuance, right?
Yeah, and it's rolled into the project, and we
Correct.
approve it. And it comes out of debt service.
The bond premium is the only part that you guys don't plan on. Everything else is planned for. It's part of the budget.
Yeah, and we don't do that
Why don't
because
you-
we don't know what the interest rate environment's gonna be.
And it's a good thing.
Right.
The next
we're
thing,
not-
it's a
we're
great
not-
thing.
Yeah.
Joe, why don't you come back with some suggestions as to ways we can use this extra money in the capital projects fund?
Okay.
You know, and then also a proposed policy or memo of understanding, whatever we want to call it, so we don't make it too big a deal,
Yeah, but the simplest thing
How
to
to do
do is
accounting.
to use it to defray the
Right, that's what I
borrowing
thought.
costs that we're gonna have next
But-
February.
but it's not going to be this much. I mean, we're not talking about, is it against bonds or just the transaction cost?
Oh, no, you can, I can not issue $237,000
Okay,
worth
okay.
of bonds.
Well, fine. Make that as one of the recommendations, and we can prove that, and that would lower our debt service.
Right.
Anytime we can lower debt service, that's good.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's what I think.
all right, great.
But since we're not making that much money.
Yes.
So the next part's, Jeff, you had asked for some comparative analysis. So I went out to the Office of Policy and Management and pulled some useful metrics that they had out there. I thought it painted you guys in a reasonably good light. I compared you guys against AAA towns in Connecticut. This information is all of fiscal year ending 12. So fiscal year 13 isn't going to be out until I think like the December timeframe. Not all audits are in, I guess. What I tried to compare you guys with was population, per capita income, permits by town, your equalized grant list, your EGL per capita, so per person, your education spend per person, and this is where your metrics actually start to get a little bit more favorable for you guys. As on a resident basis, you guys actually don't spend all that much on your education. $22,918. Your tax revenue is about $3,400 per person. If you look at the range of AAA municipalities, you guys are doing pretty well. And the most important thing, or the most favorable number that I see on the sheet is your debt per person. You guys are about $2,000 per resident, which is low, but what's more important about that is you guys have a rapidly amortizing debt schedule, meaning that over the next 10 years, that number goes away, hypothetically. I mean, you guys continue to issue, but a lot of these other municipalities have debt that go out much further.
Well, with the exception of the high school, which we did for 15 years, everything else we've done recently has been capped.
You know, you
What-
guys,
What I think we have to do on metrics is we have to start getting some metrics we feel comfortable. I think we have to present to the voters when we do a presentation how we are, because there's a lot of confusion as to how we stack up. And I'm not sure, numbers are, you gotta be careful because you can do a lot with numbers. So we want to try to get some numbers that we feel comfortable with, our board feels represents how we do to other towns.
Yeah.
So we got to start looking at this. It's not going to be easy.
Well,
It's
I agree.
tough a tough look.
I think, the thing I would caution about these numbers, and I understand why you pick these are the AAA towns in Connecticut, but we've talked about this in the past, that we need a dashboard of metrics, and they ought to be towns that are comparable to us. And I don't think New
If you guys
Canaan,
wanna list the
Greenwich,
towns.
Darien, Ridgefield, Weston,
Well, the
any of
Fairfield
those.
County towns probably are just,
You got
Take them
Avon,
right off
Granby,
the
Farmington,
charts.
Glastonbury.
I
One
gotta-
that's
I
not
gotta
on
be
there
honest,
is Canton.
You know, you're saying that you don't match up, you do.
Not in terms of, well, per capita
Well, gee,
income and
We're just talking partly
cost of
geographically
houses.
times
When
there.
OPM wraps in their analyses, you guys are right there.
What I think is really telling is that we often hear over and over again about Avon being so much lower than we are in terms of their mill rate. And we talked about, I think I mentioned in a prior meeting, that if you look at the burden per taxpayer, that's just probably not true. And according to this, they're paying $3,636 per person, and we're paying $3,410. So they may have a lower tax rate, but the per person burden of taxes is higher in Avon. And I think that these are,
But because, yeah, the property's more
Grand list is
expensive.
that's right. But I think that these are important numbers to have and to understand, and that the town might be able to avail itself of when marketing the town as well. When people are looking at where they're going to move and what have you, they look at our education, our open space, and all those amenities, but sometimes people say the taxes are too high.
Well, I also would have to, and I don't know the answer to this, but question is that's tax revenue per person. That includes tax revenue from commercial sources. So if you've got a big commercial revenue base, that's gonna make it look like you get lots of tax revenue per
That's also
person.
true. That also, that's
So it's,
right.
But I don't
yeah.
think Avon has a huge
They don't,
commercial base.
they don't, but I'm just saying you have to take these numbers.
Why don't we, not to debate, but next we get some other items, why don't we just think about them?
Tell me
We're just
what
trying to get,
towns. Yeah, you guys someone send me emails.
send emails, we're just trying to get some
Can't,
metrics.
I would just basically add Canton. I mean, the other ones are on here.
I'd ask Granby's there.
Granby's on
And
here.
if there's
Avon,
other ways we
Granby,
wanna look at
Farmington,
things-
Glastonbury, West Hartford.
We're gonna try to get some metrics that we can maybe
Just
present,
Canton,
so we
that's what I
gotta
would
start
Yep.
feeling comfortable with what we have and what does it mean?
It screws everything.
Because the Board of Ed's been very good at presenting theirs, so we're gonna try to present it from our standpoint.
You guys
We're
don't
gonna
match
present
up.
back to the
Yeah.
Board of Ed,
No,
We're not
but
trying to match up, we're trying to see how we compare.
trying to get Bert to smile.
we got them a little.
He's our competitor.
Oh, no, I got it. Just on a, per capita income basis, it's almost a 30% difference.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it for your report, Joe?
Correct.
All right.
That's very helpful.
Thank you. Just one request.
Yep.
When you print this out, would you mind putting the time frame, the date parameter right on the header?
Yeah.
Because I'll separate the sheet and save it, and then I'll say what year was it again.
I can actually give this to you guys electronic. It's actually a model, so you can put in whatever town you guys want, or it self-populates. It's pretty good.
Now, I put the next item on goals for the year, just to try to remind us, we set up goals way back in February. We talked about budget goals and goals, we're gonna work, projects to work on this year and then long-term things to work on. I just wanted Joe to kind of hand it out to us, so just to jog our memory. Because a lot of what we're doing is, we had articulated some goals, and if we're missing some things, we're gonna try to, work on them in the next few months, or at least get projects going. So our goal is to touch our goals, try to at least accomplish as much as we can, and do it, I don't wanna just hurry through them, just to say we did them, I wanna do them right. And, but this is just for our information, and this came out in the minutes, I believe, you're handing out here.
Yeah, I just
And,
grabbed the minutes from February 18th.
Talking about the bottom of page 3.
well, yeah, on page, the 3 it starts, goal setting, and then page 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, we had a lot of goals.
Yeah, we were lengthy here, 4, 5, and 6. So, some of the goals are, during the budget process, we had long-range planning issues for the Board of Finance to address. Talk about reserve policy, bonding policy, road policy, Simsbury Farms pension, communications, investment policy, reserves. We talk about not part of the annual budget process, which should be done soon. like evaluation of tax abatements, determination of future impact of Affordable Health Care Act. So some of these things you'll see, we're gonna eventually work into the agenda. Then we have processes, procedures, adopt best practices for policies, talking about the new GASB, should we adopt, we've gone through that with the auditors. Create rules for elections and operations, which are, some of the things we're trying to address. So we got, we're slowly getting there, but, over the course of the year, we're gonna try to ferret out as much as we can and get some checkoffs. But this is, halfway through the year, so I just wanted everyone to see what we kind of talked about. And it will jog your mind to say, well, yeah, maybe some of these goals don't pertain, because we had a couple in there about property tax, which we didn't have to worry about on the cars, and things change. So it's just for your information, so I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention so they could look at this, because I just want to make sure we're going to feel at the end of the year that we've done something and we've accomplished something for the town. So I think we're on the target to do a lot, but we got a lot more to do, and so this is just for your information. Interdepartment transfers. All right, this is the red and green. Please, explain that.
I apologize, guys.
It's Christmas.
I don't know why these even come to you guys. So these are basically just the transfers that go from department to department. I'll hit the top, the larger ones. So the $37,000.
What do we need to do? Is this memo, the Christmas memo?
Christmas memo?
Yeah, sorry guys, I'm a color code kind of guy. Red bad, green good. If you're colorblind, negatives are bad, positives are good.
How about, I can't.
It's hard to read.
You kind of go with the color, it kind of makes it hard for certain people to read, especially a certain age,
Yeah.
like me.
I can do a lighter color. Well, next time I won't do colors. It should be evident transfers in, transfers out.
Do lighter color.
I actually don't know what color that is, but
Anything
I'll
lighter.
send you a palette.
Not as bold.
I'm actually very good at some colors.
We used to, Joe, the way this was presented back in the Kevin Kane era, was he would show where the money was being transferred, from and to,
Yeah.
all the way, all of the different amounts. I mean,
Oh, all right.
so on the top line, that department needs 37,536, but he would show where he was transferring it from.
Okay, see, I just did it all in totals, just negatives.
I know.
So he's transferring 225,180 out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14 areas over into the, how many other areas that need it?
Correct.
For the same number, 225, but he did it in total instead of.
Yeah.
I see.
Is there anything earth-shattering here we should know about that's unusual?
Everything that's out there, we are looking at. So the first one was parks and open space maintenance. Right, very large driver around the maintenance of open space. It seemed like there was a lot of trees that needed to be taken down on paths. We're working on a plan to make sure that that's funded on a go-forward basis, and that we understand what our needs are. Admin services, it was telephone administration and conferences. Telephone, we are all over. We are going to be looking at going into a voice over IP solution. I just had a company come in last week that analyzed all our phone lines, all our ISDN lines, and they have some recommendations for us that where it's pretty much instant savings. We're going to be reacting to that shortly once Rick is back. Conferences.
Is that something we can do town-wide?
We're already on that.
You're
Yeah,
awesome.
the voice over IP is going to save them a fortune.
Good.
How much is a fortune, like 400,000?
I would say at least.
I hadn't heard anything about the savings.
So if I could just point out budget activities, explore options for Board of Education and Board of Selectmen to share services to gain economies of scale. So I'm assuming that's one of those.
That's it, that's one of those, yeah.
No, in all honesty, with the voice over IP, one of the things that Burke and I had discussed was following one solution. Cuts down on costs, because you don't need as many servers. There's clearly savings going with voice over IP. I did it in West Haven. I had a very good experience with it. Saved a decent amount of money.
Does it mean changing carriers or something of that sort?
But yeah, you're basically taking the old landlines, and they all now go into basically a computer that routes them out through extensions. It's actually up here on me. I get lost with phones. I just know there's a lot of savings with it. Library buildings and grounds. You know, guys, you guys are spending a lot of money on the library building itself. This is not a really new, this is not an old building. This is the HVAC system. It's a trained system that's less than 7 years old. You guys shouldn't be experiencing these kind of breakdowns. So they are looking at it to make sure it's not something that has to be replaced. But you know, $30,000 in maintenance on an HVAC system that's less than 7 years old is sizable.
I'm just curious, I see that the library had to receive money for buildings and grounds, but it also donated money from the children's services. So even within an agency like the library, they can't transfer within their own?
I would love to have that kind of latitude, and if you guys would like me to draft something like that, that would be fantastic. Because me personally, I think Public Works should oversee everything. You know, everything under Tom Roy's purview is his purview. Library, same thing. Finance, you know, tax office. I think that's how it should work, but no, that's not the way it's written, and it's not the way it's been done.
So because it's different line items?
Correct.
So after the first 6 months, transfers can be made, and then it's a question of, do we allow the departments to make those transfers, or do we want to see everyone?
So is this an action item? Do we have to approve this?
Yes,
Yes, we
yes,
do.
we do.
You do.
So we need a motion, if somebody wants to make a motion to approve.
So, second?
A motion and a second we have. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Transfers passed. So we got, the attachment has to go for the,
You got it.
I got it. You got it.
Yes.
Do we want, I mean, do we want to talk about what we want to see in transfer? This, actually, is this for the entire year?
End of fiscal year.
it's
It's
not-
just- I mean, this is actually not that much when you consider whatever line items in the budget's got to be, how many thousands of line items?
So can I build on that? I mean, I know that the public's reaction may be, well, you shouldn't overspend anything, everybody should live with their budget. My version of that, and granted it's out of private sector, but quite frankly, if somebody can live with their budget every year and not need any more money, they're over budgeting every year.
Yep.
So you need to cut them tight enough that things are gonna happen, that you gotta do, like the air conditioning breaking, and we wouldn't wanna see them inflate their budget to anticipate a broken air conditioner every year, and that, when something like that happens, I mean, we have to push at them and make sure we're not frivolously spending money, but that really is the Board of Selectmen's job to oversee, and Ms. Glassman's job to oversee what these departments are doing. So the fact that, you know, overall, this is a transfer, some are favorable, some are unfavorable, that's exactly how it should be. And the smaller number of movement you need to have is really a good statement on some of our budgeting practices.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Joe, the employee benefit number there is one of the biggest ones, or the biggest one on the page. Are there salaries in there as well?
Most of it is actually just benefits. No, there's not salaries in that line item.
My point is that in past years, when we've seen, and again, it was the way Kevin Kane used to present it, but there was a tremendous amount of salary adjustment numbers going from one place to another. And I don't know, I haven't done this for some time, but 5 or 6 years ago, if you added up all of the salary numbers, you could get a fairly sizable full-time equivalent number out of it.
Correct.
It would suggest that, you know, there's some budgeting issues there. So,
You get, you know.
this is a rhetorical question. I'm not looking for an answer, but I'm concerned, I guess I'm concerned that I'm not seeing any salaries.
Oh, they're there. They're there.
It's all buried in all the various
Planning,
pieces?
development, building
Well, the other
department.
thing is we've settled contracts. What you were seeing in the past, prior 6 years ago, is that the contracts weren't settled on an annual basis. So you
Well, I
saw
understand that there's that issue, Mary, but you know, I've always been concerned that, and I'm echoing really what Barb is saying, is that you need to budget this close enough so that you know, people don't just easily do everything they're doing and spend money and never have to think about, their budget or the way they're budgeting for the future year. The other problem I've got with all this is that unless you do as I think what you were suggesting, Joe, unless you learn from this where the budget issues are, you need to have some incentive to next year to look for places where, we take into account the fact that there's going to be a lot of tree work that's going to be necessary in Parks and Rec and things like that. So.
Now, as far as the Board of Ed, we don't do detail on Board of Ed.
Yeah.
The Board of Ed
Did we get
themselves,
this?
Burke, you
Yeah.
present to them, line item transfers, do they?
They don't, under the board policies, they don't do transfer.
They don't do any transfers, so
But,
it's just,
but essentially, you've got the same issues going on, right? You've got areas that you have monies that are, excess and places where you're short.
But you don't have to move it all around,
My job is to stay in budget overall.
right?
They can move it around, you don't have to see it.
Right. Well, they don't even have to move it around, right? They can just leave it under and over as long as it.
well, they're not detailed. The reason we're moving around is we don't want,
They
you
know
can't
what
end
it
up in a
is.
deficit.
They know at
But
end
from
of
the
year.
lessons learned perspective, which is what we would like for purposes of budgeting, we'd like to know, well, where are the green items
Well,
in the Board of Ed, because that tells you
But
where.
Burke gives
your
us that, when he
overbudget
gives
is.
us the presentation, he shows the pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
He does.
When he does that quarterly update.
Oh, okay.
So he's showing us that.
Yeah, we're doing it at the overall group level with like the 14 major groups or 12 major groups.
So, I mean, I think the lion's share of the town's money is the Board of Education. You're doing it at the high level for 14 groups, and we're doing it at the micro level here, even within departments. 4,000 from the library here, but then they need funding for I'm not sure it makes sense to have inconsistent practices if we want to have greater discussion of.
State regs.
Yeah, that's exactly where it is. I have to do transfers. I can't have one line item that's overexpended.
So
Board
boards
of
of
Ed.
education can overspend in one area and not.
Because they only present the one line on their audit
Yeah,
report,
one
we
line.
present the detail in the town.
That's
It's government
why.
accounting.
It's all that, right, government accounting. So unfortunately, if we have negatives, we're gonna get written up by the auditors for every negative.
So from a public transparency perspective, with the lion's share of the money's being spent, you only need to have one bottom line.
That's it. Yep.
Well, to be fair, the detailed budget is reviewed and available on its town record, right? It's not like,
Right.
it's not public, it's just, they don't have to do entries to move everything because the county will say they don't have to. And these guys do. And it's not because the town wants to make them do it, it's because they have to do it. And we have to approve it because of our role.
Well, I'm far more interested in Joe's report where he tells us that we're going to have about $400,000 that's coming back into the general fund from all of our operations. To me, that's the important number. And what it does to our reserves and where it sets us up for going into next year.
When I look at this, I think, given the number of line items in the Board of Selectmen budget, this is pretty damn good. And I'm just not sure we need to get to this micro level. I mean, at least by department, I would think.
Well, the Kevin Kane version that I was talking about is even more detailed than this.
Yeah.
It was pages of this.
I'm not sure we need it.
All right, thank you very much. So if there's any more, we'll hear about it. This is the last day to do any transfers. We have, what, 2 more months?
3 hours before the audit's issued.
Okay. All right, open space rules. We had an open space, we talked about open space last time, so I put on here open space rules. So if we set up money in the open space committee, what do we currently have an understanding of how it works? And what do we want to have for an understanding of how it works when we fund it? So Joe, do you have?
I do not currently have anything on this.
I mean, I just think we gotta get our eye on the ball. If we're gonna fund this thing, we gotta make sure we understand the control mechanism we have in place, or how the rules work, but what does it mean when we put 200,000 or whatever we're gonna put in there?
I think we talked about some, I don't know whether we're looking to other towns or putting together some recommendations relative to funds, whether we want to have a special revenue fund, whether there's a fund that can be established that would allow people to donate to that fund and derive a tax deduction from the donation. We talked about whether I thought the open space, whether the land trust had an interest in managing some of the open space on a contract basis, and people could donate to the land trust so that they'd be able to derive a tax deduction and support their passion.
Well, some of the things in our minutes, we had revenue from timber sales, possible sale of identified open space parcels, possible disposition of small neighborhood parcels, naming policies, in case there's some naming rights money, gift
That was-
policy to create donation to the, is it a special revenue fund? What are we gonna put it in?
Right.
And how do we do all these things to
So where does the money come from and
events,
how
if we
does
have
it?
events,
Yeah.
programs, where does it go? If it's gonna go to this or?
Whose purview does the open space rules fall under? Is this gonna be something that's proposed by the Board of Selectmen, or is that something that should be written and recommended by us?
Well, I think it's got to come to us from the Board of Selectmen, yeah.
I mean, if it's gonna be a special revenue fund, we have certain rules on special revenue funds.
Yeah, maybe it would be helpful, I can work with Joe for the next meeting,
Yeah.
because the Board of Selectmen didn't have a full board, so we didn't put some stuff, that's why you're not getting a recommendation tonight, but there is an open space fund that was created
Yeah.
already. So I think it would be helpful to review what the parameters of that existing
Yeah.
revenue fund is. And then we can talk about tweaking or whether it meets your needs. But there is one, it just was never funded. So there is one in existence, it does have some parameters. And I think for your next meeting, it'll be helpful to have a kind of a review of what that did and what was.
And also, Mary, from the revenue, if we get revenue sources, all these revenue ways, how is it all gonna go? I mean, because right now, revenue falls to the general fund.
Right,
And a special revenue fund is only if we so designate the revenue.
correct.
Like we sell timber, that's an easy one, it stays in special revenue fund. But if we, let's say, do naming rights and we end up with $1 million, are we gonna put that in there?
I don't think that the intent, certainly when I was discussing it with the Board of Finance at the last meeting, was not to put everything into the open space fund. The purpose of the special revenue fund was to take in revenue that would be offset by money that's needed on an annual basis to maintain the open space. So certainly anything above and beyond what's needed would not necessarily stay in the fund if it wasn't needed. So it was not a grab of money into the open space fund for the purpose of collecting it, but it's really to get a sense of what it is, what level we want to maintain the open space in town, what our priorities are, and how we're going to fund it. And do we fund some of it through the open space fund? Do we fund some of it through the operating budget? What's annual maintenance versus above and beyond? So, there's a lot of, I think certainly everyone has a lot of questions about how it would work mechanically. That's why the money hasn't been put in the open space fund.
So you're gonna work through your board and come up with something. Do you want somebody from our board to work with somebody, or do you need anything
I
like
think
that?
what we'll do is we'll review it and put something together for my board. They'll have it in their September meeting, and then if there's questions or if they feel they need, if it's pretty straightforward, we may just send it directly to your full board. And if there's a sense that there's more discussion needed, we can have that conversation.
Sound reasonable?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
So that kind of deals with the open space, the rules, and the request update too. So we're gonna be, in September, we'll get that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, reserve policy. Round 2? Or round 3, what round are we on?
And this is through.
And I'd like to thank everyone that gave inputs on it. I believe they've all been incorporated. Linda, did you see your changes in there? And
Yep.
Jeff, did you see yours?
I think I had a question too about the private purpose trust funds that you didn't answer. But
I did not answer that. I actually left it out. I thought that was covered under the permanent funds.
It was, it says.
Okay.
Does not include private
Private.
purpose trust funds?
Yeah.
So you don't want then define what private purpose trust funds are?
Yeah,
You're not,
I will do that. I apologize.
Now, one other thing you have to put in here is, when you talk about the excess, right now you're talking about for debt service or future debt payments, then you say capital or non-recurring fund for future capital projects.
You're on the last, or the next to last
Page,
page.
third page of,
Yep.
you know, what we do with the excess. I think what we have to do is, what we've done in the past is we've funded capital, like what we just did 995,000 for, and also we've put money into the capital non-reoccurring fund. So there's really two things we've done there.
Well, we,
It says that, doesn't it?
I'm sorry, but a number of years ago, we also reduced the contributions employees had to make to their health plan. We've had a number of different things that we could possibly do here. I hate to, remind you, but it's been suggested to us we could also reduce taxes.
Yes.
Novel
Or
idea.
reduce town fees, for example. I mean, there's any number of things we could do if we all of a sudden discovered we had too much money. I hate to think that that's going to be a real problem for us, but
I think our intent is to solve problems that we have with the town. I mean, we really don't have too much money. We have other needs for the money that we can solve to take pressure off future budgets. I.e., if we have a shortfall in our pension, like we've gone through a
That
tremendous.
was articulate, Peter.
That was our what?
Articulate.
And our OPEB, we have those obligations. We can solve financial problems that once we adopt the new GASBs, you'll see the true liabilities will be on our balance sheet, and we have some big numbers there to digest. So, we have a lot of needs. What we're trying to do here is get more disclosure so people understand
what we do.
what we're doing and articulate what we do, so we're not just haphazardly doing things, that we're addressing problems of the town, and we pretty much stick to the needs. Now, one thing we don't have, and you mentioned reduce future taxes, is, well, I'm hesitant to put that in there. You can put it in there, but the rating agencies, if you start putting in a number to reduce taxes, they penalize you for that.
Yeah, but Peter, keep in mind, we're looking at a portion of this where we're talking about what do we do if we're below 10%, which we're, as a guideline, saying we want as a minimum.
Right.
And what do we do if we're above 12%, which is a guideline that we're saying is sort of a target that we don't want to dramatically exceed, because then we get into the issues, we are.
Overtaxing, right.
Yeah, we're overtaxing, or we could be using the money for some of the things that you're talking about. And I don't disagree with that, but, I just, where you've got 3 items listed here, I put down 3 more, which was 1, reduce taxes, reduce, our fee schedule, think about all the stuff that's going on in the, across here that people pay for. And we did do, I don't know, was it 7 or 8 years ago, we did a one-time reduction in the cost of the employees of what they were contributing to their health plans. I don't know that we'd ever want to
For the premium holiday.
try to do that one again, because I think it backfired on us a little bit. But, those are some of the kinds of things that we have done when we've had excess funds.
The state likes to send a check to everybody right before election time.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I
I
can't
don't
wait
think
for
that's
that
prudent. I'd rather pay off debt.
You want to make a motion for $53?
So
Sorry,
specifically,
I
what you want to do?
Well, this is open for,
Specifically, what would you do here? Would you,
Crazy.
how would you modify
Actually,
this?
I'm kind of comfortable with this. I mean, the only thing that I want to make sure that we have in here is that these are not restrictions. I want the word guidelines in there. If we choose 10 to 12, and quite frankly, I think 10 to 12 is kind of a narrow range to try to be operating in, but if that's what the board wants to do, I'm comfortable with it. But, the rating agencies have made it clear to us that they want at least 10%.
So, Nick,
And-
would you be more happy if it said, in the event the fund balance is greater than 12%, the excess may be used in manners such as the following? So it's permissive but not,
Including but not limited to?
yeah, such as allows you to.
Yeah, I'm
do
not going to
other
get hung
things.
up about this. I just want the board to understand that we're
Think big.
not trying to, if we start using specific numbers that we have to meet, we're just going to get ourselves in trouble. I mean, when we did the high school, we knew that we were gonna take on a big chunk of debt and that we were gonna knock our fund balance down into the 6-7% range for a period of time. And that's fine, but we did it with purpose, and we
Right.
told the rating agencies what we were doing, and they went along with our plan.
All right. Well, the point is here, I think we're getting a policy, we're fleshing out a good policy. We have to keep looking at it. I want us to keep studying it, come up with comments, keep sending them in to Joe or questions, and then we're going to eventually put it on one agenda and we're going to vote on it. But right now, I just want everyone, I don't want to rush it through. I want people to feel comfortable, because we've never had one, so there's no deadline to have it, but it's good to have. We've been following it, similar to this, but also I don't want to violate it. If we do what we've been doing, think about all the transfers we've done in the last 3 years. Would we violate our policy, whatever we've done? So I want to make sure we're not going to violate it day one, because then it's not a good policy. If we do other things and what we say.
So we've had it for a couple of months now, and we've had multiple opportunities to give Joe input. So I guess I feel like I'd be ready to say yes or no. I would certainly support it, but
We have
I
all
think,
given input.
the question in my mind is, should Joe come back with a change in language to accommodate Nick's point?
I think,
To say,
quite frankly,
so that it's permissive and not an exclusive list,
Well, look at
which
the
is
parag-
easily done.
Look at the paragraph at the bottom of the page, because I think that takes care of a lot of it.
Yeah.
Which page, Nick?
That same page.
Same page.
The fiscal year.
Page 3?
So you're talking about the 6 dot points, Nick, or the 2?
No, the
No,
very
the
last, the last three lines on that page. It talks about what we would do if we go below
Yeah.
10%, because that's where things will
Right.
start getting critical.
Right.
I mean,
Well, that we might want to put, we say we're going to do it within the next budget cycle.
That's awfully
Right.
quick.
Within
That's quick.
1 year.
I have language that maybe we want to think about, or a reasonable time period.
Yep.
You might want to not tie yourself on the 1-year solution, because that could be expensive for the voters.
Sure.
A reasonable time period. I mean, you basically have to have a plan that, I'm a 3-year guy, that's just my personal, you can solve everything in 3 years. So, at least you got a goal and then you get it done. I mean, sometimes it can be solved in 1 year, sometimes at least 3, at least you address it. So,
Let's
Well,
say
I guess
within a
I'm just
reasonable-
concerned that we could go on
Right.
forever.
but we got to leave, right.
Yeah.
But if there are specific concerns, let's get them addressed and get a final and vote on it next month.
So to follow up on that, can I ask Nick, because you've said this several times, Nick, and I've heard you say that you're a little concerned about the 10 to 12. Could you put on the table what you think it should be?
I think that circumstances could occur that you could go from just over 10% to over 12 pretty quickly.
Okay, but, so what range do you think would be more, maybe that's something you could share with us?
Well, I'm more comfortable, quite frankly, on the top line with an 8 to 10% range for the minimum. Because there have been times where we've gone down below 8, and 12 to 15 wouldn't bother me on the upper range.
And I wouldn't be happy if it goes over 12. It starts to feel like too much.
I mean, what,
I mean, there may
at
be
one time when we
circumstances,
bought,
but-
one time when we dipped into reserves, when we bought the Ethel Walker Lane, we took 3 million out.
Right.
I wouldn't let us go below 7.5%. Remember, we voted it down because the original proposal would have brought us below an unreasonable number, so our board voted it down.
And we asked
And then
Tom
they
Vincent.
structured it.
We asked Tom Vincent to go back and restructure the
darn
deal.
thing. Yeah, to make the deal, so at least we wouldn't mess up our ratings forever,
Yep.
and that's what they did. But we took our reserves down to about 8% at that time to make that happen.
But I think this gives you the flexibility to do that, because it lays out that there can be special circumstances and that the 10% is kind of a target.
And we
But
said
on
we-
the same,
The real
by the
answer to your
same,
question is, I'm really not that uncomfortable with the 10 to 12.
but by the same token, there could be circumstances where you may want to exceed the 12%. If you know, for example, you've
exactly.
got some big expense, why wouldn't you build up
Right.
Yep.
to 15, you know?
And
If we
that's
knew
why
the
the-
Hartford was definitely going to tear they told us, we're tearing that building down in 2 years, you guys are going to eat $1.2 million, what are you going to, we're going to have to
Right, and we
have
have
$1.2 million ready.
We
And
have
that
that in here.
language
We
is
said the
in here.
following
Right.
circumstances
It
may
says you
justify maintaining
may.
a fund balance exceeding 12%. And we say, right, reliance on single corporate taxpayer, et cetera. So,
Yep.
I think we have that flexibility, and to your point on the 1 year of the next budget cycle, we could say, to acceptable levels within a reasonable time period based on the specific facts and circumstances.
Right.
And that would give some added flexibility there, but still we'd have a policy that would guide us.
See, what I'm hoping is that Joe doesn't come to us someday and say, by the way, guys, your fund balance, which was 12%, is now 8, and we didn't know it was going to happen to us. I mean, that's what the
But we're gonna
planning
know.
you're talking about is going to mitigate.
Right.
But we're gonna know, but.
All right, so we're going to get, we're going to get some more, Joe's going to revise for a couple items.
I had just one other comment under assigned fund balance. The highlighted portion, the body authorized to assign
Yeah, I have a
amounts
question too.
to a specific purpose, or we should get rid of the yes.
Right.
That, the fourth paragraph at the bottom on page 2.
Right.
The body is authorized to assign amounts to a specific purpose under this policy is the Board of Finance. Or something like that.
So you're talking about assigned fund balance, who has the right to assign fund balance for the town? To
Because it
commit?
says, yeah, because it says to a specific purpose, for purposes of this policy, it's a little,
Now, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Are we assigning a fund balance in that fund with the Board of Ed's doing right now,
With the gift?
with the gift? What are we technically doing there?
You guys accepted it, correct?
Board of Ed accepted
Board
it,
Board of
You
Ed's.
guys didn't go through any kind of acceptance of it?
not our board. But I mean, you know, you're internally, that's called assigning fund balance, means you're internally restricting something. What you internally restrict, you can undo too.
Correct.
You know, like if we wanted to set up a reserve for the Hartford leaving, and we said we want to put $1.2 million over time in there, take out undesignated fund balance, we would put $300,000 a year into that. That would be what our board would do, something like that for that purpose. That's called assigned fund balance.
Just throwing that out there, or is that just an example?
Well, just in case we wanted to do that. But that's some of the things that you can do, but that's, so that's just to think about.
I don't know. Well, that's
Yeah.
Joe.
Yeah, there's some accounting issues and stuff like that, but that's what you get your auditors for, to talk to them about, and,
I just had one question, just above that on the chart about the decision-making authority. Can be any one of the following, but in some cases, it's got to be more than one. It's got to be both boards.
So
Right.
any one of the following, or any one or more of the following?
Can include, I don't, but
mean,
am I correct?
Sorry, this is more of a default statement that aligns with your charter. In your instance, it's Board of Selectmen, they would adopt the
Right.
resolution, Board of Finance would, and then the electors may or may not have to go out to referendum.
Exactly. So it's not just one that can do it,
We could basically just say, follow the charter, and just eliminate that.
according to the charter, yeah.
but I mean, you know, we got a couple things going on here. First of all, you have what we do with reserves in our policy, then we're now, you know, we're kind of defining terms that are kind of mystery terms, you know, and trying to make it more understandable, which I think is good. So we're kind of doing a couple of things here, which
I
takes
agree,
time.
yeah.
So that's why we got to look at it, make sure people are comfortable. If they don't understand something or think it's not clear, we should try to ferret it out now. That's why I don't want to rush it. I just want to make sure, because it takes time to, you know, you got to think about it, and I want people to really understand, because we're doing a couple of things here.
And keep in mind, guys, these documents, they're living documents.
Right.
Living document.
That would be a goal, is to maybe in the future, to once a year revisit things. Are you comfortable with the numbers, or anything need to be changed?
Well, as I said last month, I'm used to a policy world where you look at policies every year and reapprove them.
So can we have as a goal, maybe everybody gets any remaining comments and see, maybe put it on there as a possible vote for the next?
Well, this we could put on, I mean, for all our goals to approve, I mean, that's why, I mean, all our policies to approve, that's, when we make our goals up, we can put that on and,
And I'm just saying, could
No, I
we,
mean,
could we,
this particular
item, can we put it on for a vote next meeting? And-
From, if anybody's got any
Yeah.
wording
Yeah.
changes, be very specific and send them to Joe. So he
any
can-
concerns or you don't understand, so everyone feels comfortable, they're ready to go next month?
I like that idea.
That's
I do have a few things, Joe. I was negligent in getting your comments this month, so I will get mine to you.
There's some typos here too as well.
We want everyone to wordsmith it, so please get it so we're comfortable and understanding, and so we'll try to put it on the vote next meeting, but just, we're getting, I think, a good document. I think it's a good, this is a good understanding.
This is all in Word documents. So you can put headers and footers and all that kind of stuff into it. Yeah.
You can do your comments in the document itself. And so,
All right.
changes.
Board rules, that's one of the things we're going to try to do is board rules. Now, we've been here a while. Do you want to go on to that tonight, or you want
I
to?
just want to give an update,
Okay.
which is basically soliciting, there are a number of other boards in town that have internal operating procedures. I have reached out to the chairs of those boards to ask them for their copies, so we can see how what rules are operating under. All have agreed to send them to me, but none have.
What a shock.
And they're amazingly different between the boards.
Yes.
There's no consistency.
And I went all over our website to try to get off, and they're not on there.
I have the planning and zoning ones I can give.
You do?
Yep.
Okay.
Also, Maura, I've asked
With the board of selectmen's.
another town what they did, and they took the town of Madison's, actually have areas, and I think they did best practices from probably GFOA or something.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to get my hands on that for you,
Yeah.
and I'll send you over there what they adopted and the areas they looked at.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that would be good to look at something outside of
Just-
our
no.
town, too.
my main intent for putting it on is that we have
Is
some
there a world
rules.
outside Simsbury?
I heard, but,
Well, we just want to,
There's an odd number of board members.
oh, well, please.
I mean,
What fun would that be?
Now you're into charter
I
changes.
had tackled the what to do in the event of a tie, because it was something that may come up from time to time. And conceptually, and I think I passed it around, but I mean conceptually, the thought would be at the first regular meeting following the election, in which one or more new members are elected or re-elected, and after they've been sworn to office, we'll elect a new chairman and a vice chairman with having a goal of representation from two parties to promote a bipartisan cooperation and collegiality. Then I have, in the event of a tie between two members of the same party for chair, a coin toss would decide the victor. And the chair would then select the vice chair from the pool of remaining board members whose party affiliation is different than that of the chair. And in the event of a tie, and this is just a starting point, but in the event of a tie between members of different parties for the role of chair, the victor would be the member of the party holding a majority of seats on the Board of Selectmen. And should there be an equal number of members from each party in the Board of Selectmen, a coin toss would then decide the victor. And then the candidate losing the coin toss in that event would be the vice chair. It was just a starting point, but I created out a whole cloth trying to come up with something that would appear to be fair and reflective of voting in the community in the town-wide election.
well, what we need is, we have, we're going to have, we have a lot of work to do as far as rules, as far as what we want to do. And I mean, I think what we got to be careful of in rules is, how many rules do you want to adopt? We have some basic needs. Jeff's addressed one of them. We had the classic elect the chair. We got some basic rules there, and there's probably some other areas we want to expand into. So I think we ought to look at it, just see what we feel comfortable. We can do the short version or a long version, whatever is the pleasure of everyone, but we got to get something, because we have no rules right now.
Well, doesn't Robert's rules cover a lot of things?
Yeah, and we can maybe even refer to that as we do our rules.
Well, and the state
Can we-
statutes come into play with us, too.
Exactly.
Right.
Can we get from other towns how other towns address this issue if they have an?
The event of a tie.
It's by state statute, it goes to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
State
it's
statute's
not-
pretty
It
clear.
doesn't matter what we say.
But isn't it by state statute unless there is a rule within the committee?
No.
Oh, okay, I
Can't have
misunderstood.
committee can't.
Right.
I mean, our board in
why-
particular is heavily regulated.
But I think,
So if there's a state statute in this, why did
Well, I think what we're trying to do
I
is,
draft this.
I don't
No,
know.
no, no.
The chair asked me to draft this.
no, I asked you to draft rules.
No,
Rules
but
are
you
we're
said
gonna have a
specifically,
vote.
I
I
want to
mean,
know what to do in the event of a tie.
what's come up is if we never
wasted
vote
my
on
time.
chair, and we have elections and we have the same chair, where we had good criticizes, you had the same chair for so many years, we never even talked about,
And there are boards in this town that don't even have a rule that they have regular elections, and we didn't either.
Right.
And does it make sense to have to reelect a chair every so many years?
I
Two
think
is maybe, I don't know what the right
I
number is.
think we ought to do it whenever we have new members of the board. We refresh the board every 2 years, and I think that makes sense. Now, it may default to the Board of Selectmen, but what do you do when the Board of Selectmen is split 3-3, as it might be in our town? What governs that? So my policy would govern that in the event of there being
Yeah, maybe
equal
state
numbers there.
statute.
But if state
Doesn't-
statute says,
Says, yeah,
Board of Selectmen decide, then.
But if the
But
Board
then
of
if they're
Selectmen
tied,
is
what-
tied
then what?
3-3, what do we do?
But that's
first of all, the big picture is we're gonna have an election, we gotta
So
agree to
anyways, yeah,
that.
that's the
But the
update.
two of you are the ones who are supposed to go be
Right.
the subcommittee and
Bring
figure
us
this
back a
out.
proposal.
So,
Yeah.
we await with bated breath.
So we're gonna get them.
I will look
We're
for the
gonna get rules.
statute
We have no
tomorrow.
rules, and eventually we're gonna get some rules, so it's one of our goals, we will get there.
Okay.
Other business. I'm gonna hand out something. When I was on vacation on the beach, I was reading the Block Island Times,
This is dangerous.
and,
We noted your tan, too. Were you and Joe both hanging out?
This is dangerous.
I didn't know you were
and
drafting
in
it.
there, they talk about the PUC clears the way for municipal streetlight savings. There's a lovely article about Rhode Island buying their streetlights, and it says Massachusetts and Connecticut has the same law. So I asked Joe, do we own our streetlights or not? And there's some significant savings by buying your streetlights.
We don't own our own streetlights?
No, most municipalities do not.
There's a lot of things you can buy. You can buy all
Right.
the poles and you can buy all the electrical wires that are out there.
I mean, some of these, like, some of these other companies, when they're buying, right now, what they're doing is buying the space on the pole when they're,
Right.
we talk about mergers and things, they're not actually buying the other
The
company.
poles are all owned by the phone company, right?
Well, I think we ought to look into
No,
it.
electric company.
I thought it was the phone company.
So this is just a handout for reading, we should find out, but these are ways that, I said we can invest to save money. So what I mean is there a way to buy something or use the town money to get a return? Joe has said, well, gee, there's a way to not even have to fund it, where you just don't pay for it, you don't really get the savings till you've paid for it for 3 years, or, so there's a lot of ways we can look at saving money, so these are some of the things that I saw that, by buying LED light bulbs and buying your own telephone poles, this town's saving $200 or $157,000. So I don't know what that relation to us means, or can we do it, but I think those are the kind of things we have to look at. So this was my beach reading, so
We don't have that many light poles anyway, though.
I don't know. Don't know what we have, I don't know, but I think we ought to,
Not in my.
A number of years ago, we saved a significant amount of money, I think, with some of these utility lights.
We just spent
Out here.
$132,000 last year in the streetlights.
Wow.
What was that, the bulbs?
Electricity.
I believe it's typically just the electricity.
Connecticut's passed a similar law.
Mr. Couchman, please stop.
I'll look up that law when I look up the statute for to do in the event of a tie. in the Board of Finance.
You didn't start reading anything on solar panels, did you?
I already read that, so I'm all, for solar, that's the Board of Ed, I've bothered Burke with that, so, I know Avon just adopted solar.
You can bother the town too. Town always working on something.
So can we be careful that we include all, so the thing we do is there may be a savings for us in the cost of paying the electrical bill, but now if we own the pole, we have to replace the pole when it's broken, we have to do the collection work against somebody who damages the pole and go after their insurance company, there's town resources needed. So when we look at this, can we look at the total costs, so we make sure we're not penny wise and pound foolish on this one?
Or we can insure our poles. See what the cost of insurance would be.
But the main thing is, there's areas we can look at,
Right.
study,
Look at
there's
everything.
savings out there, we just gotta, look for them, and every year, and then there's a lot of good work. I mean, what the two boards did last year was fantastic, saving $600,000 on insurance. If we could find that, and in our model, maybe we'll say, gee, we're looking for $200,000 to $300,000 in savings every year. That's one of our goals, that everyone has to, we challenge ourselves. Unless we challenge, we're never gonna get there. Unless we make it a goal and focus, we'll never get there. So we have to focus, We have to try, and we can keep the cost down, because our board's goal is to keep tax rates competitive, if not zero tax increases. So that's the big picture, and we're trying to ferret that down to everyone, and this is some ways we can do it.
And we have that state statute we do need to comply with as well. So that we need to, there's a presentation that gets made to us, I believe, by the Board of Education for shared savings, and then we review that. I want to be sure that
We did that last year.
Yep, they
we
did.
comply with that, yeah.
All right, anyone else have any other business or anything? We got some items for next meeting's agenda. Also, I'm going to put on there, we eventually got to get our insurance agent in here. We have not met our health insurance agent, and we got to talk about the Affordable Care Act. So I don't know if it's going to be next meeting or the following, if we're going to get the investment advisor, and maybe we'll do the insurance person the following month. But I want to make sure all our advisors show up before our board, and we
Burke, when's our next insurance meeting? September?
September, yeah.
So we ought to do it after that meeting.
So probably in October. At our October meeting, we'll invite Ripple in to come in.
I'll tell you, that guy is impressive.
Yeah.
You guys are a great guy.
You talking about Bob Lindbergh or?
Yeah. So bring him in October just to talk to us, and then also if you can highlight anything on the Affordable Care Act that we have to worry about it, or I'm not knowledgeable on it, but I just want to make sure that we don't have to plan for it. So, all right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
So you and I